26 years ago that we were at Coopers and Lybrand when I just came to Barbados, and you and your wife also was working at Coopers and Lybrand. You were both very kind and welcoming to me, coming all this way and not knowing anyone. So I very much appreciated that, and it sticks with me over these years. And it's great to reconnect and to hear more about your personal journey since then.
Yep.
So I guess maybe starting, I think you left from Coopers and Lybrand and joined Towner Management, which was, I guess, your first sort of step into the world of captives. And so maybe we could start there and see what was it that attracted you to the captive industry at that time.
Well, thank you, John. Thanks for having me on the program. I guess you're talking about the old days back in the audit pit at Coopers in the 90s, when we were both trying to make our mark in public accounting. I think at that time we would have had a portfolio across all the major industry sectors, manufacturing, real estate, retail, financial services, etc. Interestingly, John, my introduction to insurance accounting was really part of the assurance team at the old Barbados Mutual, which, as you know, was the forerunner to what is now the Sagicor Financial Group. But as far as specific insurance knowledge, that was limited at the time to some of the internal training sessions that we would have had in the firm at that time. The 90s, that was a rollicking time, of course. Captives were evolving nicely post 1984, I believe it was, when we had the Barbados U.S. double taxation agreement signed. And then subsequent to that, we had the setup in Barbados of a number of insurance managers associated with all of the large insurance broker. So my own transition to captive insurance really occurred in 1998 when I left PwC and joined one of those management companies quite by chance. Just a correction, before Towner Management Group, my first entry into captive insurance was actually with the local office of Marsh. So really quite exciting times at that time.
So okay, so you joined Marsh, and I guess those times, thinking back 26 years ago when we were there at Coopers, I think there weren't any mobile phones, if I recall rightly, and I think we were just rolling out the audit software on a computer.
Computerized audits.
The West Indies had a very strong cricket team still, I think, in those days. So the world looked a very different place. So you started with Marsh, okay, and then I think you joined Towner. Perhaps walk me through it. I think you were back at Marsh, and now recently you took on the role of head of SRS in Barbados.
Well, I mean, Marsh is where I went to work at the time. And Marsh, as you know, was and still is a public company, synonymous with being the largest insurance broker and risk advisor. Certainly, I think by volume of clients, I've been fortunate to work for two independents, Towner Management Group, as you referenced, which was a local indigenous company that I joined after Marsh, and now, of course, SRS. SRS being slightly different from the Towner Management Group because SRS is acknowledged by all accounts as being the largest independent company that's operated for more than 25 years. So, I mean, it's been interesting working with two kinds of different types of dynamics. And so the question always is asked, what is the difference between an independent versus a large public company? So, I mean, if you look at the two, Towner and now certainly SRS, vis-a-vis Marsh. I mean, certainly if I speak about SRS now as the incumbent, as I said to you, it's operated for more than 25 years. The company has been able to survive in the industry by being, I would say, being a trusted partner, in addition to being consistent in terms of high quality service delivery. And what has stood it in good stead has been, I believe, its flexibility, innovation, which is, in my mind, John, a key benefit of being an independent. And in a lot of ways, it has been similar to Towner, ensuring that the staff is at the heart of the company, ensuring that the staff has a vested interest in what we do through employee ownership scheme. So, I mean, that has worked well. Understanding that clients are expecting more as an independent SRS, we see our role as providing information, not strictly data. And I would say most importantly, decentralized decision making that allows for the type of response that our clients require, which is perhaps not so in the big public firms that could be steep in a lot of what we call corporate bureaucracy. So there's no doubt, when you look at captive insurance industry, it's become more dynamic, and there is a need for managers to become more dynamic as well, while seeking timely and continuous improvements, whether through its technology or its human resources. So I would say being nimble and investment in people talent to facilitate growth is really what SRS is about, and what we've seen generally with independence.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you for that. And I guess one thing that stood out there when you're talking about decentralized decision making, I know when you took on the SRS role, this was right I think it was right around the start of COVID. So really interested to hear how that transition worked, and obviously a lot of decisions, with very little reference points to use in terms of how you made those decisions. So can you share a bit about how that transition played out?
So yes, I commenced my role as MD in Barbados. That date was May 1st, 2020, so not quite 2 years even as yet. And ostensibly at the very start of the pandemic, I think, which was somewhere around March of that year. So the immediate challenge, I would say, was being recruited by and then liaising with an HR function that was located in the U.S. That's where SRS is headquartered, while leading a team in Barbados that was already working remote. So that was the immediate challenge. The next challenge was obviously in forging relationships. I would say while understanding the existing processes and determining if and how we could build out a more effective operating model in what was in many ways a new way of working for a lot of people. Thankfully, I came from an environment where remote work existed for at least 3 or 4 years pre-pandemic. That was a model that we had at Marsh, at Towner, which then became JLT. And so for me, I'd long seen the benefits of remote work under the right conditions, I would say, John, and especially having what we had at the time, a paperless office, in relation to cost savings, efficiencies, etc., which is where we are now also at SRS. But I mean, having said all that, the biggest challenge was ensuring during this time the safety and well-being of our staff and family, as well as the physical separation from our clients. who thankfully now are once again returning to the island.
Good, good. I mean, in terms of challenge going forward, with the pandemic, hopefully kind of more in the rear view mirror now, what do you see ahead in terms of fresh challenges for you in this new role, or newish role, I should say, 2 years in?
Yeah, well, I think we've all adapted, and as a company, we've adapted. Remote work is something that everyone has taken in stride. We've evolved, and we have a kind of hybrid system in place. So there's flexibility whether to come and work in the office or from at home. As I suggested before, we have the clients who are also returning to the island, and we're engaging them more. I mean, truthfully, John, my mantra has always been, to make each day a better day than the one before. And my personal challenge is therefore always to do better and be better, and to lead by example. So when I think that, I'm no longer able to make a difference, or the company by extension is no longer able to make a difference, then I know it's time to move on. So I think continuous evolving and growing and adapting. I mean, we can't even predict what's happening globally. We've seen everything in terms of all the geopolitical issues. And as a company, you just have to be nimble, which thankfully we are, and just try at the end of the day to best service our clients.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, let's move on to the company then, SRS. I mean, it seems like you are growing very fast. I think in 2021, I saw a recent press release saying you had 13% growth in captives, a remarkably high satisfaction number from your clients. So what is it, if you had to put your finger on sort of the unique value proposition of SRS, what is it that really does attract those clients to your firm?
Well, I mean, some of it, I think I would have touched on it already. I mean, as a company, we pride ourselves on our attention to detail, the thoroughness of our approach to our service. Prior to me coming on board, many of the existing relationships have been long-standing ones. So if you're asking me what is our focus, the easy answer, John, I would say that we are focused on one thing: the building of successful insurance companies. That's it. So as an independent that is employee-owned and client-focused, I would say that we endeavor at all times to provide a kind of unbiased advice. We want to be that service provider that basically our clients can trust. The benefit to our clients is in the expertise, I guess, of our people, who we believe are proven as being some of the best in the industry, that will work for our clients. I mean, the numbers that you alluded to speak for themselves. One of the things that we do within the firm, we have on an annual basis a client satisfaction survey. We actually send out a survey to all of our clients across all the jurisdictions in which we operate, and we ask them to rate us. We ask them to give back, give us feedback. And as a firm, we continue to score high marks. And Barbados, as a firm, continues to score high marks. I think based on the 2021 results, our score was something like 4.8 out of 5. And for me, that is very satisfactory, because when you think about all of the challenges during COVID and not being able to see clients and visit clients and really engage them in a really meaningful way, our performance actually went up slightly from 2020. It was slightly lower, 4.74. So to have been able to actually improve on your service delivery during a pandemic period is a testimony to all the work, that has been done by everyone, including all the staff here on the ground.
For sure. So it sounds like referrals is probably going to be a big part of your kind of client acquisition strategy. I mean, what does that look like, your marketing efforts as a firm and you personally in Barbados?
So, I mean, as I just said, John, in our business, service delivery is everything. So our main source of business comes from client and service provider referrals. I mean, that is a fact. We, however, make it our business to continuously engage the insurance constituency in terms of what is happening within SRS and, by extension, what is happening within the industry. I do believe, though, that we do have a solid marketing team, a social media team. I'm sure that, when you go across social media, LinkedIn, and wherever else, that we do have a presence, you will see a lot of solid information that we continuously share. So that marketing and social media team, they do a very good job, not just necessarily selling SRS, but more about providing information, which as I alluded to earlier, is something that clients really, and not just clients and prospects really appreciate. But apart from all of this, John, after 20 years of being in the industry and meeting people and sharing the captive story, business will find you, even when you're not looking, and specifically if you have a solid track record.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a long kind of sort of pipeline of prospective leads out there. Yep. I guess you mentioned that clients, I think, were kind of keen to get back to meeting in person. What's the feeling on the ground now? Like, are people? Some clients got comfortable with remote meetings and. Is there a big pent-up demand to get back in person, get down to the island? Like, what are you seeing right now?
I mean, in this pandemic era, the pipeline has been developed largely using Microsoft Teams, and I guess this current state of the insurance market, it being hard, perhaps the hardest since maybe the 80s, where we had some specific challenges in the U.S. So we've had quite a number of queries about captive insurance, and they've been frequent as well as varied on a wide variety of risk management issues, whether it be lack of capacity, increase in the deductibles and rates, uninsurable risks, and on and on. All the commentators speak about it. So we've done a lot of calls. Of course, every kind of conversation does not lead to a positive feasibility. So there is a sense that there are people looking to set up captives. Our main source market for Barbados remains Canada. Pre-pandemic, it was, I guess, perhaps normal to visit clients and influencers at least once a year in Canada, in addition to meeting up at maybe some of the industry conferences and all the, as well as them coming on their various trips to Barbados. So that is something that we miss doing, getting out to Canada, seeing our clients, seeing our prospects, seeing our influencers, and then of course going to the industry conferences, etc., and meeting some of business owners and people just to share an idea about the concept. SRS, we do manage entities of beneficial ownership in the U.S. and Latin America as two of our other significant source market. So again, some travel is also required there. So the good thing then, Ray, to sum it all up, John, is that now with, the airport open, I mean, it was never closed, but now with a lot of the restrictions no longer in place or the stringent protocols being in place, we do have more and more people who are looking to come down and have a face-to-face meeting, to come and kick the tires, to engage the service providers here, to engage the regulator's office, to engage the managers as well, captive insurance managers, investment managers like yourself, just to understand what is happening on the ground. So I think we'll be seeing more of that. As I suggested to you earlier, some of our clients are coming back, have started to come back. This month of April alone, we have a number of in-person board meetings.
Okay, great.
Which is good. Yeah, which is good. And once the market continues to remain hard, and we imagine that it will in the foreseeable future, then I think we can see more, as I said, queries in terms of, what is happening in the captive insurance space, and we're going to have more engagement in terms of the service providers, and I think we'll have more people in terms of foot traffic, et cetera, coming to the island.
Okay, yeah, all good for the island. You mentioned Canada there, and obviously there's the double taxation agreement between Barbados and Canada. Just interested to understand, within the SRS network, obviously you've got offices elsewhere in other captive jurisdictions. What's the kind of niche or, again, UVP for Barbados versus some of the other islands? Where is it that we do better with attracting captives?
Well, I mean, Barbados, the strength in Barbados has been, we do have you speak about the treaty. I mean, that treaty goes back to the 80s, and long before that, Barbados and Canada had a lot of, good relationships in terms of trade and commerce. We've had all of the major banks here, some of them for over 100 years. So, I mean, Canada is where our major source market is in terms of numbers. I think the last set of statistics at the end of December, there were about 308 entities licensed. 50% of those were from Canada. So, I mean, that is where our bread and butter has been in terms of Barbados. Our value proposition has been in the strength of that relationship. But apart from that, we do have all the things on the island that lends itself to doing business. As I alluded to earlier, the big Canadian banks. The cost is also a factor. Sure. In terms of business versus maybe some of the other domiciles. In terms of the capital requirements for setup and stuff, and the simplicity of our insurance regime. You either a class 1 insurer or class 2 insurer, depending on whether you're doing related party or you're doing third party risks. So there are a number of things where the value proposition for Barbados makes it ideal. So I wouldn't say that we have a niche in terms of some of the other jurisdictions. Bermuda being, having, a reinsurance market, etc. But I do know that you can have any type of structure set up here, and there's no restriction to the types of risks you can write. Barbados as an industry in 2021 had one of its most successful years in terms of onboarding new captives. SRS, we ourselves onboarded a few, but Barbados, the island paradise sells itself. So we just have to ensure that from a business facilitation perspective, we continue to get it right, whether through right size regulation or efficiencies and processes, technology development, innovation, that we keep looking forward in terms of keeping the jurisdiction moving forward and progressing and growing, because I think we do tick a lot of the other boxes that would want clients and prospective clients both to stay or to come and set up new businesses.
Right. Yeah. Business facilitation for sure.
Yep.
It's something that we still need to keep pushing on.
Correct.
So maybe since you mentioned that, perhaps we'll switch to the industry as a whole. I mean, I guess a couple of questions here. One is really for the average Barbadian in terms of why should they really care about the captive insurance industry. I know at BIBA we've made a lot of efforts over the years to try and showcase the contribution that the sector has made to the Barbados economy, and secondly, just in terms of I guess a moonshot in terms of how can we take this sector above, let's say, Cayman and Bermuda, and even though we've had our best year, how can we build on that and really turn this into a much bigger industry in Barbados? So two sort of related questions there, I think.
John, international business as a service industry is one of the productive sectors impacting the Barbados economic output. I mean, there have been several studies commissioned, you know about them, that have ably quantified the value in terms of what taxes, net spend by visitors, employment, all of that stuff, What I will say is that during COVID-19, we witnessed the GDP of Barbados shrinking. Some numbers say it was over $5 billion pre-pandemic, December 2019. And we had 20% erosion of that more at the height of the pandemic. So, to the lay person, these numbers may seem irrelevant. So, if I could just comment, I would simply say that our economy needs all of its productive sectors, including international business, working optimally for the benefit of all Barbadians. Yeah. I don't think our economy has been built robust enough to deal with the kinds of adverse events such as what we saw with the pandemic, or even now, the geopolitical fallout from, say, the conflict in Ukraine. So what I would say to the lay person also is that, while most or all of the other productive sectors came to a screeching halt during the pandemic period, international business was one of the only sectors that was still earning foreign exchange and keeping Barbadians employed. And I think in that respect, everyone has to be properly engaged in terms of the importance of the sector. When you even look at it further in terms of opportunities in the industry, there's so many types of professionals, attorneys, corporate and administrative people, financial and management accountants, investment people like yourself, and finance professionals, compliance, actuaries, business administrators, IT people, and these are all the types of professionals that our education system produces, trains and produces, and can continue to do so, especially when you think of the expected changes in the industry once we start talking about things like insure tech. So the contribution is there. It's tangible. The contribution can be broader. Risk management is something that's escapable from every facet of business, and I think it's something that we generally need to pay more attention to as a vulnerable society. Alternate risk financing in the form of captive insurance is only just one aspect, but there's so much more. One aspect of risk management, but there's so much more that we can do. And I'll just give you a simple example of, how the narrative can really change. My son, for example, who we've spoken about, John, he's an engineering student in civil engineering, and right now he's finishing off his master. He's writing a thesis, and it's on critical infrastructure resilience in small island developing states of the Caribbean. I hope that I've got the title correctly. I had to actually ask him to remind me what it was. But his paper is really looking at disaster risk reduction in the built environment and generally on sustainable development. So there's so much more that we can do, around risk management that can lend itself to everything that we're doing within international business that can redound to the benefit of Barbados. I mean, you talk now about moonshotting. I hope that I've answered, the question. I think I've answered both, kind of, but I mean, moonshotting, what can I say? I would say that we have to ensure that we have enabling legislation, the framework, and as well as opportunities for the marriage of insurance and maybe something like fintech, In doing so, we can perhaps create a market space in Barbados where we can link insurance protection buyers and maybe capital market investors. In recent days, we've heard the government of Barbados is looking at establishing a gold exchange, creating so-called free zones, linkages between Barbados, the Caribbean, Latin, Africa, the Middle East, I think I heard. Similarly in insurance, I think we have to create an ecosystem where we take the industry and the domiciles forward, where the government, on the one hand, i.e. the FSC or whomever is the agency, get people involved like the ISM or international stock market, and really create that type of new ecosystem. So the question then I would ask everyone, are we ready to issue STOs to capital market investors to guarantee insurance claims for risk covered by policies issued in the form of smart contracts? So, that is just my kind of moonshot, I think we have everything that we can be cutting edge, but I think it needs some of the right people around the table and, mobilizing all of our resources and just doing and moving and not waiting to follow the examples of anyone else.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Chart our own destiny. Well, listen, I look forward to continuing that conversation with you more offline in the future. Turning to a topic closer to my heart now, investments and investment management. I guess it just would be interesting to understand how your clients kind of approach this. Do they tend to in-house the solution or outsource? Do they have a preference for on-island managers? I know economic substance has been a topic, a kind of recent topic for a lot of the international financial centers and how they deal with that. So interested to hear your thoughts and perspectives on this, Kirk.
In Barbados, there's always been a requirement for each licensee, insurance licensee, to function as a bona fide insurance entity. As a domicile, I would say we've always insisted that management and control reside here. A service like investment management, can, however, be outsourced, and typically it has been. So when I look at my book at SRS, and I'm sure it may very well be the case with some of the other managers, many of the investment managers are resident in Barbados. So I think that is perhaps a testimony of there being very many good investment shops located here. We're happy to deal with managers on the island. We're happy to deal with managers such as yourself, and we think that, you all do a very good job.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, I guess what sort of trends are you seeing in this space in your client portfolios? Obviously, we've come off very low interest rate regime in the last couple of years or so, and that's changed just in the last month with the Fed increasing rates, albeit very, very by small margins up to 25 basis points. So how are your clients dealing with this in terms of potential future returns from investment portfolios? Are you seeing any new innovative strategies or anything?
Yeah, well, I mean that I'll answer that question, but I think while you were asking that, I was kind of thinking about even the prior question, John.
Yeah.
In terms of, and more than just talking about the outsourcing, and the fact that we have capable managers here, I think it always comes down, and it will perhaps lead into the question you just asked. What are clients looking for in terms of investment managers, right? So, I mean, insurance is always about capital preservation to ensure the future loss payouts can be made. So obviously the ideal insurance manager is one that will be willing to work with the captive owner as well as us, the manager, in looking at the risks of the business. So I mean, what are your business risks? What are your underwriting liabilities? What is your business there to do? What is your risk appetite? And then when all these questions have been answered, and you would expect that your investment manager will be pivotal in helping to craft asset allocation strategy as part of the investment policy statement that would be set around these types of variables. So for existing managers, and even in this current environment with all the geopolitical issues, I would still say that this type of approach of managing a portfolio should not change, with the expectation that there would obviously be a continuous review every couple of years to determine if there's the right mix and for what the company is trying to accomplish. So I mean, there has to be a working relationship between the business itself and the investment manager, kind of working together hand in hand, which then I guess takes us into your other question now in terms of the low, I think you said a negative interest rate regime.
Well, yeah, low or negative. I mean, we're kind of moving away from that slowly at the moment, it seems.
Yeah. Right. I mean, we've had conversations, at different, board meetings. Where do you put all your spare cash? Do you put it into gold? Do you sell off some of your positions? I mean, that is a question I should perhaps ask you. I mean, if we use gold, I guess, as an example, there are always ways in which I suppose gold can be used as a protection strategy. Some people have done it through purchasing of mining stocks, some gold ETFs. This is as opposed to buying the bullion directly as part of the asset allocation. But for me, I mean, I'm only a lay person. I leave it to the experts like you, I would imagine buying gold now, you'll be buying in at a high price. So the only reason to do so would be, if you think there will be a continuation of perhaps say something like the current conflict in Ukraine and fallout from that.
Yeah.
And as a whole, commodity prices, I would imagine, are higher since the start of the year, and perhaps will continue to be so until some of the easing of these geopolitical tensions. But I mean, you alluded to it, John. As I understand it, and you can correct me, bonds are beginning to show elevated yields, bond yields. Yep. So I mean, if there's no need for cash flows, which is the biggest thing in insurance, then I think what we're seeing is that a lot more of our clients are looking at short-term duration bonds. And as I said, if you don't have the need for the cash flows, you don't worry yourself about the ups and downs in the valuation, and you know that your returns are guaranteed and at maturity. So I mean, they're looking at that, and then of course, if you know that there's an upward elevation in the bond yields, why not upgrade in quality and take advantage of, say, for example, the higher government yields? So I mean, those are types of things that we're seeing. Equity for me, as always, about how do you position the portfolio for the benefit of the company, and I think most clients think like that. It's really about what are you buying. Do you get yourself in things of a cyclical nature? You look at maybe some stocks that are dividend paying, and I guess the high quality ones. And I think when you sit down in board meetings and you hear all the conversations and the board have conversation, I think most people think that it isn't really a lot of times the fundamentals that are creating the problem. Mm-hmm. So it's really just about making sure that you are in the right things, and rather than getting into the whole aspect of restructuring just for the sake of restructuring. You take a long-term view, and you largely ignore some of the geopolitical issues that will create a sense of confusion. So I mean, all that is really, John, just to say, yes, we, in the traditional sense, in the early days, you would have had the 80-20 split between fixed income and cash. That was the mantra, back at the very start. But in recent times, there has been a push to rebalance portfolios with higher quality equity concentrations. Mm-hmm. Maybe not more than 20%, but especially I would say the equities will come into the equation for books that have built up, mature books, right, that have built up a significant amount of surplus over the years.
Yeah, well, that's very helpful, Kirk, to share that. I mean, I think you're quite right that rates have been correcting, and although they're not back to the days of sort of pre-2005 where you could earn 5% for just in cash, we're on our way back to those levels. I think 2.5 or so on the 2-year. So yes, hopefully that's a problem. The low yield environment is yesterday's problem, and there is a nice carry yield available for the captives that means they don't have to kind of stretch for the risk in so much into equities to earn an investment return. So, but as you said, it's a very dynamic space and things change quite rapidly. With the war in Q1 being a good example. So, okay, so thank you for that feedback on on investments and investment managers. Kirk, I think we pretty much come to the end now of our conversation. So I just wanted to wrap up by thanking you for your time this morning. Really appreciate it. It's great to reconnect over all these years, and certainly wish you all the continued success in this new recent role at SRS, and the exciting times, I think, as we come out of COVID, of getting back to in-person meetings and getting back out there. So look forward to our next in-person meeting, which I think is coming up next week. So I will see you then.
Yes, definitely, John. Thanks for having me. It was great to engage. I just say reconnect, just to talk a little bit about the industry, a little bit about investments, and I think we touched in a number of other hot topics and not so hot topics, and look forward to good things for both yourself, your firm, as well as for the domicile that is Barbados.
Thank you very much, Kirk.